Hi everyone, welcome to the class. I want to go over the demand and supply project with you today. I want to be able to go over this assignment and give you the ability to understand how to do the assignment and give you a little some lecture points on the assignment as well that will help you guide you through the process, and we'll go through each of the problems. So I'll be flipping through between the screens as well. So if I go over here, and we need to look at some questions that are going to come up and some concepts that will be important. But a demand schedule is a table that's showing the relationship between the price of a product and the quantity of product demanded. And the term that's going to be important this week is quantity demanded. And this is how much am I willing to purchase at different prices. So if you look at your everyday life, there are different products that you're willing to pay and get more at certain price levels. This will make a very important relationship. A demand curve will show you this relationship, which I will show you a graph of. It'll be a relationship between the price and the quantity demanded. So now, if we look right here, so if we look at this graph, you notice we're going to be graphing between price and quantity. Here is the demand schedule, and you have that on your assignment. From the demand schedule, you're going to look at a list of prices and a list of quantities that people will want at that particular level. From a demand schedule, we can draw a demand curve. You notice that the demand curve is going to be a negative or inverse relationship, which means as the price decreases, quantity demanded will increase, or vice versa. As the price increases, I don't want to buy as much. Quantity demanded will decrease. The law of demand, it's another question on your sheet, is going to be an inverse relationship between the price and quantity demanded of the product. You'll notice that this is an important relationship to look at when you look at how we're establishing the market price. Now we're going to look at different shifts of the demand curve. So the only thing that will change the demand curve is the price of a product. It'll be a movement along the curve. When there's a factor that doesn't change the demand curve, like an increase or decrease in the demand, you'll notice it goes to the right if there's an increase and left if there's a decrease. This will be reflected in some of the factors that cause the demand curve to shift. Now let's look at supply. Now supply is going to be dealing with sellers. Sellers are willing to supply more on the market at higher prices. It has nothing to do with if they're going to sell it, but they're willing to supply more. As you notice, as the price increases, they're willing to supply, or the quantity supply will increase. However, if the price decreases, they're not willing to put as much on the shelf as well. This is a positive relationship between the price and quantity supplied. And the law of supply is a direct relationship between the price and quantity supplied. This word quantity supplied and quantity demand are going to be very important. The only thing that will cause the quantity supplied or quantity demanded to change is one word: the price of the product. You're going to buy a different amount depending on the price. And here again, we'll look at shifts. We start at S1. If there's an increase in supply, we go to the right. If there's a decrease in supply, we go to the left. These shifts of the curve will be brought about by factors that cause the supply curve to shift that we'll deal with. So let's look at the assignment now. For the assignment, it's going to be asking you to draw the supply and demand curve. You could put this on Excel, and this will be able to give you, highlight these areas to give you the supply and demand curves. Now, is the demand curve a direct or inverse relationship? Well, we looked at that. It's an inverse relationship between the price and quantity demanded, as illustrated here. And I would put that on your example. Show how, as the price increases, consumers aren't going to buy as much. Quantity demanded will decrease. Now, supply, look right here, these two columns. That's a direct relationship, which means as the price increases, I'm willing to supply or put more on the shelf. Now, what is accordance at the equilibrium? You want to look at where does quantity demanded equal quantity supplied, and it'll be right here at this price level. You notice that quantity demand equals quantity supplied at 980 units. and that's at price $13.50. So you want to make sure that the equilibrium is at that point. Now, when the price changes from $900 to $950, well, the factor that caused that price change to that occur is a change in or a movement along the curve. It could be a movement along the demand or supply curve. It depends on how the situation exists. But if it's a demand, you notice it's a movement along the curve. Now, if income increases, which curve shifts? That is a determinant of demand. So if income increases, you'll notice that the demand curve. So if we look at income as a determinant of the demand curve, if there's a shift or an increase in income, demand will increase, as reflected by this graph right here. So we start with D1, and increase goes to D2 for that example. So you want to show a rightward shift of the curve. Another one, 7, if there's an initial graph, if the labor costs decrease, that's going to be a supply factor. If it decreases, so workers are now cheaper, and I can hire more workers, supply is going to increase. Okay, well, let's see what that's going to look like. So we start here at S1, supply increasing goes to S3, goes to the right. From an initial graph, if it's a substitute, becomes available at a lower price, which curve shifts? Well, that's a determinant of demand. And it's a determinant of demand. You'll notice that if it's lower priced tennis shoes, the substitute, the other good, I'm not going to buy as much of because I'm going to buy those tennis shoes. So in this example, you want to draw an equilibrium, a graph that's in equilibrium right here, and you want to look at what will happen if there's an increase in demand or decrease in demand. In this example, tennis shoes are cheaper, so there's going to be a decrease in demand. So the new demand curve will be here. And what will happen to the equilibrium price and quantity? And on the last question, if income decreases and labor costs decrease, which curve is affected? So if income decreases, you know the demand curve will decrease. And if labor costs decrease, the supply curve will increase. So you want to show both of those shifts on the supply and demand curve. So again, start with the equilibrium here. Show the demand curve decreasing and supply curve increasing to show you the new equilibrium right here. Now we'll get a little bit later on, we'll talk about what happens to the price change for the assignment, but as long as you can draw that actual curve and the shift, that will be good as of now, but we'll have a little bit more analysis. If you need additional resources or help on this, let me know, but I'll be looking at grading your work on how well you depict the graph and how well you show the equilibrium points and your explanations. Make sure to distinguish between the change in quantity demanded and the change in demand, as that will be very important. And if you have any additional questions, let me know as I look forward to your effort.